Wow. Just wow. This game is amazing. The first time I saw this game, I think it was Dragon Age 2. It was on a friend's laptop back in high school. He would bring his laptop and I would watch him play. I couldn't play it on my PC as I didn't have the money to buy it and our internet connection was like 5 kbps, so it would take about 1 week to download this game and I had to keep my PC on, which my parents didn't like. I got the chance to play this game because of EA Play. It's actually pretty good if you're short in cash and want to play good games. But let's focus on Dragon Age Origins. This game was developed by BioWare and published by the devil themselves, EA. The game was released on 2009, and yes, this is the same BioWare that made these two trash cans. Before, BioWare was known for games like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, and Mass Effect when it was good before this trash. I don't really know who to blame for the recent fails of BioWare, but we're not talking about that right now. Let's get back to Dragon Age Origins. This game's greatness is in a whole other level. From storytelling to gameplay to world building, character progression, companions, everything about this game is just amazing. But it's not perfect, and it's not the game itself but the game's limitations. What I'm talking about is that this game was not built to run on modern PCs. I read somewhere that it had to do with RAM usage. I'm not a big software guy myself, so yeah. There's an unofficial fix for it, but I didn't try it as people said it wasn't 100% fixed. So what I'm talking about is the constant crashing. It will crash a lot, traveling from one load area to another, putting on new equipment to cutscenes. This game would crash a lot. But thankfully the fix I came up with was the save scum, and it didn't bother me too much. It kinda helped in a way because when the game would crash it'd be like 4 AM in the morning and I had to go to sleep. So yeah, I guess it was a good thing too. It was like an alarm clock to put the game down and sleep. Another thing I noticed were all the modern game designs that we seem to take for granted. Like every quest in modern games had a quest marker. Every item you have to pick up for a quest is marked. In Dragon Age Origins, it's not. You actually had to read and pay attention to things. Not everything is handed on a silver platter. Well, until I learned about pressing tab. Another is how items are color-coded in modern games. You know how games now have this color coding system to differentiate common gear from uncommon gear and epic gear? Well, here it doesn't have that. It would usually be up to you on what you feel made your character stronger, from what stats you wanted to aesthetics. And this is one of the things that makes you feel like it's really a character you built. But it's not all good. Some mechanics like the inventory management and its limitations was annoying, and how certain quests would be totally locked out because you didn't pick up a thing in this area, now it's gone forever. But to be honest, even the not so good mechanics were part of the authentic experience. The old school mechanics added to the flavor of this game, and my god, does it taste good. Let's talk about character creation. Let's compare it to Cyberpunk 2077. In Dragon Age Origins, your backstory actually affected some aspect of the game. Admittedly, I only have one playthrough under my belt, but I've read a lot of forums talking about what changes depending on what race you pick and your backstory. A lot of the world's views and reaction towards you will be affected. Now let's compare it to Cyberpunk 2077. You have 3 backstories. Aside from the beginning quest being different, nothing really changes. Going into this game, I didn't think that the character creation would be this deep. Throughout my playthrough, I went for a rogue that dual wields daggers, and when I paid close attention to the leveling up system, the amount of builds you can combine and make viable is surprisingly a lot. You could be a damage control mage, or vice versa, a pure support mage, a rogue that went for dual main hand weapons, a dagger wielding rogue who focused on backstabbing, a pure tank support warrior, a DPS warrior, and a lot more builds to experiment with. I went for a team comp with 2 mages, Wynne as my pure support while Morrigan as my control damage, Alistar as my tank support, and my character as the main DPS as an assassin/bard. I've always loved games that gave you all the tools to customize a lot of your experience, and this game is one of them. Speaking of companions, they are really great. It has that trademark BioWare magic to it. The banter between Alistar and Morrigan, how Alistar sees Wynne as a grandmother figure, how Leliana and Morrigan would fight over your character, and how Shell would talk to you. You have a cast of companions that made playing the game a lot more interesting and made the world more alive. I could see trying out different party comps, not just for strategic purposes, but for a purely role-playing purpose as well. Maybe you want to be a straightforward Grey Warden who would sacrifice one to save the many, or you would be a knight in shining armor, or even someone who doesn't really give a fuck. This game really spoils you when it comes to roleplay. Let's quickly talk about romance. Yeah, Morrigan is queen and my lady. No need to talk about that further. Another interesting mechanic is how your companions favor you depending on your choices.
100 sovereigns from you for a letter with the seal of the Terran of Guaren upon it, implicating him in all of this. Then, we leave a few days earlier than planned with our profits and remaining slaves unharmed.
'Tis a reasonable enough starting offer.
I feel dirty. We're not considering this, are we?
While Alistar wants you to help as many as you can, Morrigan can sometimes oppose the thought of helping every person asking for help. This also adds more layer to your playthrough. Also, companion quests are always interesting to see through to the end. The combat is really great. I haven't played a combat system like this in a while. The last time I could remember was when I played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and I adore that game a lot. At first, I was really struggling with combat. The first place you went to when you officially begin your journey, I was dying a lot, and it frustrated me at first as I felt really weak, but after slowly learning the mechanics, the combat opened up and became more interesting. This is also when I started to both really roleplay as my chosen class and build a strategy around that. The combat system, funny enough, didn't feel dated. It feels really interesting and engaging. Most RPGs we have now is button mashing your way throughout the whole game, and that would really make modern games feel stale and repetitive. In Dragon Age Origins, the combat always felt refreshing as there was no assurance that you would survive every encounter, especially if you didn't pay close attention. The combat system would always ask for your attention, especially in harder encounters. One slip up and you could die and had to restart the fight again. Even simple encounters could kill you if you didn't pay close attention. I'm not going to talk about the story too much as I want to avoid spoilers. The story as a whole gave me Lord of the Rings vibe, setting out to unite the land under one banner to fight this evil force from destroying the world. If I stopped there, you would ask me what's so special about the story? Well, it's the stories in between. One weak thing about this game I noticed is how every location you visit had basically the same scenario. Every location had an issue only you can solve. It always had two phases, the introduction phase and the dungeon phase. The introduction phase is about learning what's up with the location and getting side quests and all of that, while phase 2 would be dungeon crawling. I call this a weakness of the game as it's probably the only thing that I noticed was repetitive, but at the same time, every story within those phases were great. From a crazed mage trying to cause disarray between the mage circle, from a dwarven kingdom having issues with politics, to an oral that is poisoned, to an elf tribe leader shrouded in mystery. Don't worry, none of these are spoilers. Every story always felt engaging to follow and see through to the end. Side quests were also interesting as most of them had little stories to tell on their own. Main quest wise, all you had to do was gather an army to fight the Blight, and that's pretty much it. There's so much about this game's world and story that I don't think we can cover it all in one video. But before we move to my conclusions, let's talk about the small mechanics and details that I noticed. The variety of armor for mages and rogues was pretty underwhelming. The same with weapon variety for two classes. It was clear that the warrior class was the one focused more when it came to armor and weapon variety. I'm not just talking about aesthetics, but variety in weapon and armor types as well. The rune system was very underwhelming as well. Another is the inventory. How it's hard to separate and identify items from one another. Aside from their names, the inventory was confusing to manage at first, but again, it did add to that old school game feel. But aside from that, this game is nearly perfect. Oh, and before I forget, the bugs. Boy, there are a lot of them. Throughout my playthrough, I didn't come across any significant bugs, just crashes. But you can look up the Dragon Age Origins fandom for any quest and you'll see that some of them had a lot of bugs. But yeah, the game is nearly perfect in my eyes. To conclude, this game is one of the best RPGs I could have played. It's clear how good this game really is, and it's starting to be clear why people don't like most RPGs that are coming out today. I can compare Dragon Age Origins to a lot of new RPGs today that could not hold a candle to this game. From its mechanics to its story alone, this is far superior to a lot of current RPGs. As I said earlier, most fantasy RPGs we have now is mindless button mashing and choices in-game that doesn't really matter, making some modern role-playing games very weak compared to some old RPGs. Not to say that every new RPG is bad, no, there are some classics that came out recently, and I'm not saying that every old RPG was great because we all know that's not true. What I'm saying is that RPGs like Dragon Age Origins felt like an actual role-playing game. It felt like a story I created through my actions and I can play it however I want. To actually roleplay as a character rather than just being there for the ride. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, just being there for the ride. What I'm saying is that most RPGs I've recently played failed to capture what makes an RPG fun and interesting. From an in-depth world to a captivating epic story and a chance to put yourself in the shoes of a hero in an epic story. Sure, most recent RPGs have better graphics, but this game's graphics still holds up really well. The soundtrack and the sound effects both look and sound amazing. I'm happy that I didn't play this game as a kid, as I felt like I would not appreciate this game as much as I do now. This game is great. I would highly suggest you play this game if you're an RPG fan. Try this game at least once. Since playing this game, it got me thinking how a lot of the new games we get feel bland. Yes, we have a lot of quality of life improvements and graphics has gotten to a point where it's like we're playing what a cutscene would look like before. But I haven't had this feeling in a game for a while. I'll have another video coming up talking about modern games, so subscribe if you want to see more. I guess I've been looking for an old school game like this, and maybe I'll play more games like this in the future. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today, you guys. If you got this far, please like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 500 subs. That's gonna be it. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.